hello, my beautiful friends.
Hello.
What up?
What's up, welcome, welcome. Thank you guys for being here again. Thank you guys for sharing this time with us. Today we're going to be talking about a pretty interesting topic that I know kept me in the dark for a long time, and it's how do we take ownership or responsibility for our decisions and our actions. So instead of looking left or looking right, how or when or what do you guys think we can do to look within and not blame X, Y, or Z, for something that I've decided to do?
I think whenever we try to blame people is because we found ourselves in a situation. There's something happened, or we're being blamed for something, we're being held accountable, held responsible for something that we don't want to admit, So it's normally because you're in a spot, and people are like pointing fingers at you, and then your tendency, you might feel attacked, and you're just trying to find out whose fault it is. But like in these situations, there's always two parts of the story, There's always, you always have a part in it, You might not be fully responsible for it, but there might be some responsibility that you need to take in order to resolve that situation.
I think that also comes along, like taking responsibility goes hand in hand with maturity. We are in a certain point in our lives where, and I speak from personal experience, where I used to see myself as someone that was mature, but then in these type of situations, like, I wouldn't want to take responsibility for my own actions, or we blame our parents for things that happened to us, or whoever. Now that I'm married, I blame my husband, or anybody around us for the decisions that we take. And that shows our immaturity. And then once we start learning all of this and take steps toward that, we become more mature and are able to take ownership.
What's an example of a step that you can actually take that you took that worked for you? For example, I'll tell you something that I did. I struggled and I used to blame, literally, we were talking about the song and all, but I would blame alcohol.
Blame it on the
blame it on the and I would literally use that as a crutch. I'm feeling stressed, or I just want to disconnect. I just want to black out. So I'll go and get drunk. And I'm looking with outside of myself at that as a solution when I'm not really dealing with the issue that's profoundly found in my heart. So what did I do? The first thing I did was I took some time to ask God, strategically, intentionally is the word. Mm-hmm. Show me my heart.
And I think that's the step. Being able to recognize and going to God, having a relationship with God and taking that step of okay, everything is happening around me. I'm trying to blame all these people or all these things that happen. And we give all these excuses that take us nowhere. And then once we realize that, that we need God, I think that's the main step. Yeah, correct. The breaking point, that we need God to show us, to show us where we're at.
A lot of times, we ask God to change our situation, right? We find ourselves in this spot. We're blaming people, right? But maybe God is more interested in changing us through the situation, making us more mature, stepping out and taking responsibility. Hey, you know what? I did this. The easy thing would be I did this because I was drunk. I made this stupid decision because I was drunk. Instead of taking responsibility and saying, I did this, whether I was drunk or I wasn't. I did this.
It had nothing to do with.
It definitely influenced.
Right.
Right. But ultimately, it was my choice to get drunk and then act out on my drunkenness.
I think it's a tough thing to be put in the spot, right? So when, I think you mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, when you're put in the spot, our nature is to point fingers, right? So whenever something happens and to defend yourself. And that's a situation that we're always going to be dealing with. You know, you're going to make a mistake, or you're going to be caught up in a situation and you're put in a spot. And in that moment, our instinct is to blame somebody else and to not take responsibility for that. And I think that, you know, it comes with maturity, it comes with looking in, it comes with all the things that you guys have mentioned, but we are always going to be put in a spot. Somebody's always going to ask you, like, hey, you did this, and that bothered me and that hurt me. Oh, but I did that because you last week talked to me like that. So now, you know, what do you expect? So I think that if we're put in a spot where we feel like we're being attacked or we're being confronted, you know, like being confronted sucks, you know, like when I am confronted by my husband, my first instinct is always to defend myself, always. Yeah. And I need to be in a good spot, you know, I need to be like not upset at anybody, I need to be like in a good place emotionally and spiritually to not blame somebody else and be like, you know what, you know, you're right.
You made me mad.
You made me mad, and that's why I reacted. And for the most part, it takes me a little bit. Like personally, I usually defend myself in the beginning, and then I come back around and I'm like, I'm sorry, you know, like no matter what happened, I shouldn't have to respond that way, and I shouldn't blame you for the way that I reacted.
That's good. And also something that I was speaking to somebody about last week was if there is a reaction, there's what?
A pain,
a
wound.
There's still a wound that hasn't become a scar.
Right.
So if you tell me something and I react, or I put up that, or I'm like, oh, no, or I blame, then there's something still there simmering that hasn't really scarred.
It's sensitive.
Yeah, it's still, you can still touch that wound, and that's why I'm blaming it or reacting, like you said, a certain way. And she mentioned spiritual maturity. When you are reaching or growing or developing that spiritual maturity, you take some time to just breathe.
Yeah.
Like
it's hard sometimes.
it's very hard.
Very
and
hard.
Feel the feeling, right?
It's
They talk
very
about
hard.
like, how do you feel the feeling? Like, why am I feeling like I want to choke this guy?
And what you were saying, baby, you know, how we are quick to defend ourselves, or right, where you were, how you defend yourself. And I think it's important that we identify this defender, right? And really blaming people is simply a defense mechanism. It's how we protect ourselves. Right. Because in reality, we're really afraid to being wrong. Yeah. We are afraid of failing. We're afraid of people not accepting us and loving us. You know, but why are we so afraid of being wrong? Defending ourselves, really, it's a way of pride, and pride really, the Bible says that God opposes the proud, right? So when we find ourselves prideful, that's a situation in which God cannot come in and really change us and really help us deal with what's bothering us that we're reacting on.
Yeah, we have to be willing to put our guard down. Yeah. Be willing to take off our gloves, like we say, and, you know, okay, God, show me.
And admit your mistakes. Because sometimes that's, like you said, it's pride. But if you can say, I'm not going to blame it on the alcohol, the drug, my mom, my dad, my sister, my colleague, my friend, my pastor, I'm going to admit that it was my decision and I made a mistake. And guess what? I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I love you and thank you.
I messed up.
You know, and forgiveness. Sometimes we don't forgive ourselves. Yeah. You know, we talk about that a lot here. And it's at what point do I forgive Gabe and not blame Gabe, but say, hey, I forgive you. It's okay that you messed up. It's okay that you fell short.
I think to be able to admit that we're wrong, we need to know that we have been made right. You know, until we get that truth in our hearts, that Jesus Christ died for our sins and we have been forgiven and we have been made right, no matter how wrong we might feel or people might make us feel, or even a mistake could be ministering to us, telling us that we have failed, that we'll never change, that we'll never come out of this, that this situation will never change. We have been made right.
Yeah.
You know, and when we get this truth in our hearts that we have been made right, that we have been forgiven, then we are able to stop pointing at everybody around us and we're able to take ownership because we have been forgiven, then we could give and forgive other people. A lot of times we rather, and this is a saying that I've heard, we rather ask forgiveness than asking permission.
Yeah. It's so true.
But this is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, because in reality, what you're saying is just do whatever you feel like doing and just say sorry about it later.
Correct.
Right.
And it's just a way of excusing our actions, you know. But if we take a step back and if we really take the time to ask God, should I do this? Should I say this? Should I get involved in this? You know, and we let him direct us to what we need to say, what we need to go, it'll save us from so much trouble. Even maybe into falling into situations where we're going to be blaming everybody and, you know, kind of like in a dark hole of dysfunction.
It's an unhealthy cycle, you know, to like always be like, okay, I made a mistake, I'm going to blame somebody else. I made a mistake, I'm going to do this. So I think that once you step back and you take responsibility, you break that cycle that you've been on for so long. Because I think something that we take as an excuse as well is that, oh, but everybody does that. So like, you know, I'm not going to take responsibility for something that everybody does. And that is not going to fix the issue. You know, you're going to continue to blame everybody and you're going to continue to make excuses for the things that you do. And it's not the way, it's not a healthy way to live, you know? Yeah. And I remember our Pastor Jaime, he always says, he teaches in the program here at Canaan, he says, are you willing to risk your relationship because you want to be right? You know, like, are you willing to choose to be right instead of choosing your relationship? And I think that in the moment when we are upset, when we are angry, when we are hurt, we choose to be right. Mm-hmm. Which it goes back to like, okay, you need to bring it to God. You need to forgive. You need to do all these things because I know that in my case, I choose being right a lot of times. But that's not, you know, the right thing to do. I need to choose the relationship. I need to choose the fact that I'm not going to blame that person for my actions. And I'm going to, you know, choose to be in that relationship rather than to be right.
And also I think that actually this Sunday, Pastor Jaime was also preaching about that, about peace, about how we keep our inner peace. Mm-hmm. And being able to do that is, part of doing what you're saying is being able to keep that peace, you know, and not, like he gave the example of, okay, who did you inherit your eyes from? Your dad gave you your eyes, but what are you going to do with your eyes to take care of them? Right. If you can't see, you have to wear glasses. If you know, it's our responsibility, no matter who did what to us, we have to take our responsibility to be able to have peace. Yeah. If not, we're just going to be living in chaos all the time, trying to blame others.
And it's easier to blame people than to take responsibility. But that's not necessarily what Jesus called us to do. Yeah. You know, it's not the easy way. It's gonna be the hard way, what we have been chosen for.
But the right way.
Yeah, the narrow way, right?
The narrow door.
And so, yeah, I mean, this is good. You know, I think that we could do another 2 sessions on this because it goes so deep. Yeah. And in the end, I have the opportunity to be 100% responsible for my decisions and for my actions, and look within always first. And if we do that, then we're working within first, and then God can bring out what he wants to do with us. Thank you guys so much for being with us. Thank you guys for expressing your hearts and being genuine and transparent. I think that that's how we can truly make the biggest impact in other people's lives. And so I love you guys.
Love you. Thank you
for having
us.
Good
Love
talk.
you. Thank you.
Good talk.
What's up, guys? Thank you for tuning in to another one of our talks. If you enjoyed it, like, comment, and subscribe, and let us know what stood out to you the most and what topics would you like us to bring to the table. Till next time.